Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Raynare? Part 5. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Day 2 of 120 training days. On the second day, the chief taught the group the phonetic alphabet, which chief figured they could use to confuse enemies, since they're dealing with the supernatural, who may be unfamiliar with such jargon. He also had them learn the basics of gun safety, with keeping a weapon pointed away from other people at all times, as well as being aware of their surroundings. They may not be using guns, but the same basic concept applies with sharp melee weapons such as swords, spears, daggers, and even scythes. Then, John taught them basic military terminology, such as line of fire, take point, rear guard, flank, diversion, covering fire, sound off, Oscar Mike, friend or foe, seek and destroy, hold the line, torch and burn, scorched earth, guerrilla warfare, spray and pray, weapons free, collateral, casualty, war crime, fucked up beyond all recognition, Fuber, and a few others. Luckily for Murayama, she didn't miss much on the first day since she knows most of this. Day 3 of 120 training days. The trainees thought they would continue learning more vocabulary, but when they arrived at the training facility, it was closed, so they made their way to the soccer field, only to find a large rectangular wall covering most of the field, with a single doorway in the middle facing them without a door, instead covered by a black curtain. Looking at the wall, Issei began narrating. On that day, humanity received a grim reminder that he was cut off by volley. No. But that anime is good, but there are so many better ones out there. The girls listened to their conversation with amusement as Issei gave him that annoyed look. Yes, you know the one. Let me guess, Naruto is your favorite anime. You. Then what is? Sword Art Online. Issei was about to tell him to get out when Volley cackled. I'm kidding. My favorite anime is My Hero Academia. Sword Art Online is garbage aside from the first season. Agreed. I, the author, also agree. Arisu turned to Kuroka. Did you hear something? Naya. Nio. They waited a few minutes, and the chief arrived. Today, I want to put you kids and your knowledge to the test, a practical test. Said the chief, now fully armored. There will be 2 different trials I'm putting you through. I will explain the second one later, but the first one is a simple time trial. I will be partnering all of you with one person except Issei Haidu, since there are 11 of you. There are 16 targets and 8 hostages in this course. Be precise, because if you hit any civvies, 3 seconds will be added to your final time for each. You are not allowed to use any superpowers to boost your speed except any magic for the purpose of killing, such as projectiles, fireballs, etc. Trust me, I will know if you're cheating. The team with the fastest time is the winner, while the slower ones will be left with much to work with. Any questions? Irina raised her hand. What do the winners earn? The chief smirked. More time to catch their breath for the next course, unless you go last. This earned groans from everyone except Issei, Arisu, Volley, and Raynare. Issei, you're up first. You're with me. Let's show them how it's done. Volley held his hand up. Hang on a sec. Don't you think it's a little unfair if Issei gets to go with you? He will automatically win. John shook his head. No, because I am not going to be shooting anything. All Issei has to do is keep up with me. The kendo asked, what is the record and what time should we aim for? Well, the record is exactly 19 seconds, but you should be aiming for no more than 30 seconds to be on par with the pros. If you can't keep it under 30 seconds, then you know what you need to work on, which is either speed or team efficiency, and if you kill any hostages, you need to work on your accuracy as well. Clocks on the Jumbotron appeared at 0 o'clock in minute seconds milliseconds format for each team, and next to it is each person's name and a chibi version of them. Everyone could immediately tell that stronger people were sorted with the weaker ones for the most part aside Issei's and Volley's teams, the weak link usually being shown as the name on the right side of each team. The name on the left is the person taking point. This is also the order in which they go. Teams. Issei Chief. Raynare Murayama. The Kendo Ravel. Ross was Kuroka. Irina Tsubasa. Arisu Volley. As Issei and the chief took their positions on left and right of the doorway and entered the maze on chief's hand signal, the clock began counting up and a voice of a British drill sergeant spoke on the loudspeaker. Go. 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 The chief took point followed by Issei, and as Issei entered, he immediately shot a bolt of light magic that barely missed a cardboard cutout of a hostage and hit a cardboard cutout of a terrorist, taking care of 4 targets in the first area as he quickly sprinted past the surprised chief and into the next area. Right as Issei entered a new area while killing a pop-up terrorist in the window, the British voice yelled, hit the targets. Flashbang through the door. Thanks Captain Price, Issei mumbled. The layout of this new area is built to confuse the trainee, but Issei is lucky to be a fast thinker. He entered a doorway to his left that takes him downstairs, which leads to a dead end where only 3 targets stood. Quickly taking care of them, he ran back up, saw another target at his left behind a barricade, which he threw a light dagger at while stabbing another to his right as he sprinted up a set of stairs, shanking one in his way at the top. The loudspeaker voice suddenly switched to an American voice. Last area. Move. Move. Issei hit 3 more targets, jumped down a 6-foot ledge, and killed 2 more as he sprinted to the finish, appearing to the right of everyone. Trial 1 results. First place Issei Chief 02087. Second place Arisu Volley 02190, 1 hostage killed by volley. Third place Raynare Murayama 027 and 30 seconds. Fourth place Arena Tsubasa 031 and 4 seconds. Fifth place Roswas Kuroka 034 and 20 seconds. Sixth place Akeno Ravel 041, 3 hostages killed by Ravel, Akeno, and Akeno. They all took part 1 of the obstacle course, and needless to say, the bottom half were frustrated with their results, while the top 3 teams were mostly happy. The only team who was an exception is the second place duo of Arisu and Volley, who would have beat the record had Volley not killed a hostage on accident. The group chuckled nervously at the sight of Arisu trying to calm Volley down as he paces back and forward, mumbling cuss words to himself. Volley crouched down and began drawing random lines in the dirt. Fucking idiot. Stupid. Moron. Grandson of a bitch. Coward. Bastard. Why am I so reckless? I should have never been born. Arisu furrowed her eyebrows. Oh, quit being so overdramatic. Volley, stop being so hard on yourself. She pat his shoulder to try to comfort him. You're a dragon like me, and not just any dragon. You're the Mothifican white dragon Impera. Oh sweet daughter of mine, how it pains me so to see you suck at cheering people up. Shut up, Dad. Bahamut cackled. Volley looked up at her with a distant expression. He found some comfort in her adorable accent, albeit small. He sighed. Having this power is meaningless if I end up hurting innocent people. Let me put it this way. What if that hostage wasn't a cardboard target but instead a real person? Now imagine that hostage is one of us or someone we care about and you will see why I am upset. I may be kind of a perfectionist, but what we practice versus what real-life situations bring are completely different. The chief walked up to them. I can tell you from personal experience that in some of these situations, not everyone can be saved, meaning some hard decisions would need to be made. Anyway, the second trial is about to begin now. It is also an obstacle course time trial, except this time, you will be doing it solo. This time, they all performed much better. Trial 2 results. First place Arisu 01375. Second place Issei 016. Third place Volley 018 and 12 seconds. Fourth place Raynare 02280. Fifth place Roswas 027 and 41 seconds, 1 hostage killed. Sixth place Murayama 028 and 55 seconds. 7th place Kuroka 02999, 1 hostage killed. 8th place Akeno 032 and 15 seconds. 9th place Tsubasa 03666. 10th place Arena 03669. 11th place Ravel 03789. After they were done for the day, all 12 of them including the Master Chief, ate dinner inside the royal castle's massive dining hall. As they finished, Arena asked the chief a question. Hey chief, if you don't mind me asking, what is the most painful memory you experienced while in the military? John, who was about to take a sip of water, froze at the girl's innocent question. He set the cup down as they all waited for his answer. Well, I have experienced many terrible things, but if I had to choose one. It all started in the year 2525 in my universe, and humanity had just made first contact with a collective group of genocidal aliens called the Covenant, who are made of multiple species. The Covenant started this terrible war that would last for the next 28 years, and it resulted in the deaths of over 23 billion humans and several dozen, maybe even hundreds of our planet's glassed. He paused to look at their shocked expressions. Before I recall this particular memory, don't blame the Arbiter. He killed plenty of us, but that was only because the religious and political leaders of the Covenant, the prophets, forced his kind to serve them. The Spartan felt awkward talking to these kids about his personal life. He only ever told them that he was kidnapped at the age of 6 and trained for 8 years of his life to become a super soldier and that he fought alongside the Arbiter. Now at the age of 42 and a seasoned veteran, he always has been the personal Grim Reaper of his higher-ups, so one can imagine how difficult it is for him to suddenly share much of his past traumas. He sighed. In the United Nations Space Command or UNSC, 50% of the soldiers were Army, 30% were Marines, 10% were Navy, and 5% were Air Force. Our special forces were called Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, or ODSTs for short, and they made up 9%. They were the equivalent of this universe's American Navy SEALs. Us Spartan eyes made up of less than 0. 0.0001%. I love all my brothers in arms, but Spartan eyes were the best of the best of the best of the best. Better than any Marine, ODST, or any other Spartan generation. 75 of us made it through basic training, but less than half of us survived what came immediately after. The augmentations, drug enhancements that killed or crippled most of the other kids. I was one of the lucky few who not only survived, but became exactly the soldier they needed me to be. Initially, Spartan eyes were meant to fight against human insurrectionists, terrorists from the outer colonies who hated the inner colonies, including Earth, because of unfair tax laws, but… Chief paused to take a long sip of water, finishing the drink. We were 14 when we became fully fledged Spartans by February of 2525, right when the Human Covenant War started. I was deployed to Harvest, a peaceful outer colony used for farming. When the naval ship we were on couldn't do any damage to even the shields of a Covenant vessel, I was the one who came up with the plan to destroy it from the inside by boarding. The team consisted of myself and 4 other Spartan eyes. Kelly, Linda, Fred, and Sam, who were all my closest friends. All Spartan eyes are family to each other, but these 4 were like siblings to me, inseparable. Unfortunately, one of us had to stay behind to make sure the nuke we brought with us detonated, and Sam volunteered. While the 4 of us escaped, Sam gave his life. I felt responsible for his death. 44. He got up and left, leaving a baffled group of trainees. Issei sighed as he looked down sadly. I wonder if I could ever bring myself to do that kind of thing where I'm in his shoes, to sacrifice one of you girls. Raynare cupped his cheek. Darling, it depends on what is at stake. Her cheeks turned a little pink as she blushed at what she is about to say. Let's say that, hypothetically speaking, you were to have a baby with one of us. Such as me. The other girls also blushed. Would you be able to order me to die or even kill me yourself if it meant our child could live? I know I would gladly perish for you. Issei looked at her like she's crazy. That's not fair for me to be forced to make that choice. For God's sake, Ray, this isn't the trolley problem where you choose who to run over, this is war. If one innocent person dies, then chances are that multiple people will. What makes you think the Khaos Brigade would spare their enemies? Raynare flinched. Sorry. He sighed before he smiled at her. It's okay. The 11 of us are a family. Ravel nodded. If one of us goes down, then we all do. Arisu vehemently agreed. Yeah. You're goddamn right. Bali and the other girls nodded with determination, to which Raynare smiled. The hacker Yuiku said, Jesus, you two are like Bonnie and Clyde. Issei sweat dropped as he shared an embarrassed expression with his queen, scratching his head sheepishly. I think I prefer Romeo and Juliet because at the start, very few people wanted us to be together, as if fate itself were trying to keep us apart. But alas, 'twas meant to me. The Securitate posed dramatically. Everyone laughed. Loki, Thanos called out to one of the 2 gods kneeling before him. Yes, mighty Thanos. I have a task for you and your brother, Balder. The 2 of you cannot speak to anyone about this, not even your own father, that Thor pest. Balder turned to his brother, exchanging looks. In truth, his mother, as much as he hates to admit it, is Freya while his father is Odin. His only full-blooded sibling is Thor, but he had no problem working alongside their adopted youngest, since both of them hate the other Aesir. Loki didn't dare to look up. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. You have my word that we will not tell anyone. What is it you seek? Thanos grinned evilly. Your beloved Asgard holds something I need, something that will help us, the Khaos Brigade, win against our enemies. It's called the Eye of Agamotto. It holds the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. Unfortunately only an Aesir can access the place it is kept in. Time skip 2 days. A4 of 120 training days. Asgard. Balder was beyond frustrated. The task Thanos gave to him and his partner was supposed to be very simple, and yet it is impossible to accomplish due to their current predicament. The pair of brothers arrived at the vault somewhere high in the Asgardian royal castle, only to find out that the security detail guarding the door is one they will never get past. Thor and Odin. The 2 gods sat comfortably in front of the gate, drinking tea. They even set up a bunk bed in the way, showing that they intend to guard it 24/7 even while asleep. If they arrived a couple of days earlier before Odin summoned the Red Dragon Emperor, they would have already accomplished their objective. Do you need something, brothers? Thor asked, smirking smugly. They mistook it for condescension when it was nothing more than a smile that said caught red-handed. Balder badly wanted to fight him. Why you? Loki calmly stopped him by placing a hand on his shoulder. No, it's nothing. He turned to Balder, who could sense the annoyance in his foster brother's eyes, and whispered. Let's go. A shit-eating grin creeps onto Thor's face as they walked away. In another dimension, a raven-haired boy opened his eyes with a loud gasp. He clutched his chest in pain at the memory of his self-planned and successful assassination, as this is the first time he awoke since. After calming down, he looked around and realized where he is once he studied his surroundings. A small, houseless shrine floating in the middle of the sky in its own dimension and bathed in the golden light of a distant sun. See's world, he thought. Why would he be here? He died. Hello Zero, or should I say Lelich by Britannia, 99th Emperor of the Holy Britannian Empire, an authoritative male voice spoke. What? Who are you? Calm down. I won't be able to talk to you for long since I have lost much of my former power, so I have to make this quick. As of right now, I cannot tell you who I am other than the fact that I am a deity. I am only here to give you a choice. Seeing the things you did before your death, I felt tremendous grief and sympathy for you, so I am here to give you a choice. Lelich raised an eyebrow, still unable to see the speaker, only hear their voice surrounding him. And what choice would that be? Your first option would be to immediately move on to the afterlife. Unfortunately, because you killed people despite your good intentions, you are not allowed to enter heaven or hell. Your soul would roam the universe forever. That sounds like a terrible option. What is the other one? Option 2 is something that you might not like. There is a group of 11 people in another world who I wish you to train by imparting your knowledge of military strategy on them. They are a group that consists of mostly kids between the ages of 15 to 17, whose universe's fate rests on their shoulders, so don't withhold any information. Lelich frowned. This deity is right about him not liking it, since he doesn't like to give up any of his secrets. Zero's formula for military success was his and his alone, but a universal calamity sounded even worse. What do I get out of it? Once you are done teaching them, I will put your soul to rest forever by taking you to heaven. What do you say? After much deliberation, he replied. I accept the latter. Splendid. I will teleport you immediately to the facility. Wait for them there. Great Red smirked. Ho. Very interesting. The office looked at him. What is? You'll see. Our Issei is getting a very interesting sensei today. As they teleported to the soccer field, Issei and Co were expecting to continue working with the chief. Instead, they were met with a boy who looked around their age. My name is Lelich by Britannia. I will be training you all today. To be honest, I don't even know any of your names as I was just assigned this task. One by one, they introduced themselves to him. He nodded. I see. What year is it in this universe? I died and was brought here. Issei answered. It's 2020. Bali couldn't help but laugh at how accepting everyone is of the fact that the 18-year-old in front of them died. It should be surreal, but at this point, with the way 2020 has gone, nothing is a surprise anymore. Did World War II happen? Yeah. Hitler killed himself. 9. Roswis yelled, earning looks. She blushed and scratched her head. Sorry. I'm part German, so I guess that side of me came out. She finished with a nervous chuckle. Issei laughed. Yes, Hitler killed himself. Excellent. Is there a classroom nearby? I am going to teach you all some history and military strategy. They led the former tyrant to the next door building and into the same massive college lecture hall that chief used for them. Lelich looked around for any tools he could use. Let's see, a map. He pulled down a political map hanging from the whiteboard. Uncapping a red Sharpie, he began drawing on it. Turning to the group, he projected his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, even though everyone was sitting in the first 2 rows. World War II is the most interesting part of history on both the political side and the military side, since it shows both the best and the worst of humanity, but we'll be focusing on military only. Now, raise your hand if you know the strategies Hitler tried to use during Operation Barbarossa. Raynare, Arisu, and Roswis raised their hands while everyone else shook their heads. Raynare has lived for thousands of years, so of course she knew it. It is still fresh in her mind when hearing about and seeing the insane amount of evil humans are capable of. Arisu is the daughter of the most powerful dragon to ever live, so her father wanted her to be smart too. World War II fascinated her. Truth be told, it fascinated all of them, but she has done her research. Lelich grabbed a meter-long ruler and used it as a pointer. What you see here were his plans to invade the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, which commenced on June 22, 1941, and ended December 5, 1941. There were several Russian cities that he wanted to capture along the way, but at first, the Germans focused on these 5 as their goal. Kiev, Minsk, Smolensk, Leningrad, and most importantly the capital in Moscow. Other famous battles include Rzhev, the Caucasus, Stalingrad, Kursk, Berlin, and others, but we'll get to them in a moment. Because Hitler invaded and conquered France not too long before, Stalin thought the Germans were vulnerable and was planning to invade Germany since Hitler put 3 million troops into France, but much to his surprise, the Germans invaded first with only weeks to spare from a Soviet invasion. Well, he did read Hitler's autobiography Mein Kampf and highlighted the parts where Hitler mentions his hatred for Slavs and plans to invade Russia. Stalin was not prepared for an invasion at all, and his troops were taken completely by surprise, despite knowing that a conflict with the Third Reich was inevitable. For example, at the beginning of the war, Soviet tanks were so useless that their shells would shatter on impact of German panzer tanks, leaving no damage, and the only way to destroy those panzers would be to fire those shells at point-blank range. Operation Barbarossa was the single most massive invasion force ever assembled of over 3 million Germans, willing to fight and die for their Führer, and only a few thousand would ever return, much less survive the duration of the war. More people, soldier or civilian, died in the Eastern Front of World War II than any other theater of war in history. Hitler was sure that he would win against the Soviets in a few months using blitzkrieg, but he didn't. Instead, the Soviets clapped back, brutally murdering and raping Germans left and right between 1942 to 1945. Do any of you know why Germany lost the war? Ross raised her hand enthusiastically. Oh. I know. Firstly, they declared war against the Americans, which they didn't need to do. The US was already supplying the UK and Russia through the Lend-Lease Act, giving them hundreds of thousands of trucks, planes, guns, ammunition, clothing, and other equipment. So fighting a war on two fronts with a country that had those logistical capabilities and can also invade while keeping many soldiers at home to defend was very dumb of Hitler. Secondly, and most importantly, they underestimated the Soviets and their will to fight, plus the Russians' faithful ally, the Winter, destroyed any chance of the Germans advancing. Thirdly, Hitler didn't equip his soldiers with the proper clothing in winter, their vehicles also couldn't move since they got stuck in the dirt and oil was freezing. Lastly, the Battle of Stalingrad was the turning point of the war. The former emperor nodded. Very good. Speaking of the Battle of Stalingrad, we also need to remember that Stalin did not allow any of his soldiers to retreat, and once the Battle of Stalingrad came, he ordered that none of his own people would be allowed to leave, that if any of his soldiers takes even one step back, they would be shot. It was cruel, yes, but he believed it would make his troops fight harder to protect the civvies, which they did. As a result, 2 million people died in Stalingrad, 800,000 of them from the Axis. Operation Uranus was a big reason for this since a lot of them starved. But why did this happen in the first place? Hitler was trying to reach the Caucasus, which contained 90% of the USSR's oil supply. Capturing that would mean starvation for Soviet military machinery that relies on oil, and a huge blow to their economy. Unfortunately, the city of Stalingrad stood in the way of this goal, plus the Volga River, which ran through Stalingrad, was a key supply route for the USSR to deliver goods throughout the nation. By the end of the war, the Russian government declared the official tally of dead soldiers being 8.7 million, and that's soldiers alone. Some have said as many as 14 to 18 million. They lost as many civilians as they did soldiers, mostly from hunger due to supplies being cut off, most of the times intentionally by Stalin himself. Silence ensued. Issei was shocked. He knew Stalin was cruel to his own people, but this cruel. It was yet another reason for him to hate communists. Lelich broke the silence. After the Battle of Stalingrad came the Soviet counteroffensive, leading to the Battle of Kursk, and later on in 1945, the Battle of Berlin. Kursk was the biggest tank battle in history, and the Battle of Berlin was a one-sided massacre in which the Germans were getting slaughtered on all sides and desperately fled west to surrender to the more merciful US or UK, rather than the Red Army. Stalin basically played 4D chess and outsmarted Hitler, even though he didn't listen to his closest advisors and generals at first. Both commanders were very intelligent but too emotionally driven or prideful. What is the lesson here? Why did the Germans lose despite outnumbering the Soviets at the beginning of the Eastern Front? Hubris. Never underestimate your opponents. Never underestimate what they are willing to sacrifice for victory. The Germans had the Soviets surrounded, but Stalin essentially pulled an Uno reverse card by surrounding the Germans and attacking from their rear with the goal of either neutralizing the target or die trying. There's a question as old as war itself. If someone is trying to kill you, are you not to rise against him and kill him first? In military strategy, if you have to bide your time and be patient to win, do it, just don't pull a Hitler and push your men to invade enemy territory at sub-zero temperatures. The earned laughs from the group. I could name countless other examples in history such as the 300 Spartans of Greece for one, but my point I am trying to make is that in a fight, it doesn't matter how many enemies you are up against, whether it's 1,000 or 1,000,000 or more. At the end of the day, it is your willpower to fight that determines if you win. They felt their hair stand on their heads as shivers crawled down their spines from his inspirational words. Lelich suddenly felt cold. He looked down to see his lower body slowly evaporating. It seems my time in this world is over. Make sure to remember what I taught you. The strategy of Barbarossa, Stalin's counteroffensive, and the moral of the story. Goodbye everyone. And with that, he disappeared, but everyone felt like their intelligence just went up tenfold just from being in his presence. Issei, wake up. An unknown female voice spoke. RMM, he groaned with his eyes closed, feeling very sleepy. Time? Was that time? He slurred groggily. 8:30 a.m. Wait, who are you? He opened his eyes and rubbed them as he yawned, his vision still blurry. Your office. Another man spoke enthusiastically. Your Uncle Red is also here. Ah. He fell out of the bed with Raynare still in his arms. Hiya. Raynare yelped, startled from being awakened so suddenly. As soon as she realized that there are other people in the room who aren't in Issei's harem, she covered herself with a blanket, being scantily clad when she sleeps with Issei as usual. Ahahahaha. Drake let out a hearty laugh. Issei looked up at his aunt and uncle, studying their appearance. A short gothic lowly as well as a muscular, spiky red-haired man who happened to be two of the three dragon gods other than Bahamut are also a part of his lineage. Uncle Red. Auntie Office. Drake told me about you, and I wasn't expecting a visit from you so soon. Great Red chuckled at his nephew's nervousness as he scratched his head. Yeah, about that originally, we were planning on seeing you a year after you got reincarnated as a devil, even training your two oldest friends in arena and volley, but seeing how things are moving much faster than expected, we thought we should get to know you now. Pretty soon, the two of us will train your whole group. Another voice moaned as they shuffled in the blankets. It was Akeno. She sat up, yawning as she stretched, revealing that not a single shred of clothing was in use, her fully nude breasts in view of the now nose-bleeding Issei. Great Red looked at Raynare, who was terrified of them. Yo, Ray. Office regarded her with a blank look. At first, she secretly promised her pain and misery for killing Issei, but seeing how much Raynare makes Issei happy, she couldn't help but like her just a bit. Raynare meekly responded. Hello. Another woman, a beautiful brown-eyed one with long black hair, walked into the room. Hello Sekiruite. I am Freya, the Queen of Asgard, mother of Thor and Balder. I apologize that I couldn't introduce myself sooner since I was busy. Issei nodded. Hello, Freya-sama. Gyufu. Just Freya is fine. You should get dressed and come meet your aunt and uncle in the dining hall. Issei blushed at his state of dress, only wearing his underwear. Yes. I'll be right there. He was relieved when the three adults left and that part of the blanket Raynare was holding covered up his morning wood. Gyufu, Akeno giggled as she stood and started putting on her clothes. Fully dressed, she decided to leave Issei and Raynare alone. Raynare let go of the blanket which Issei was holding. She smirked when she saw what he's doing. Oh, Issei, she sang his name. Are you currently experiencing your otherworldly urges? He looked at her with wide eyes, his face turning crimson. No. Raynare's smirk widened into a sly grin. You don't have to be so shy with me, you know. If you want, I can help you feel better using my body. What? Want to have sex? A quickie? Somewhere in the distance, Gabriel felt her daughter's horniness, much to her dismay. He chopped the top of her head. Oh quit being such a naughty girl. He poked her cheek playfully. Someday we will, but only when we're ready. Sex shouldn't be just above having fun and pleasure, it should be about making love between people who love each other. Raynare pouted but then giggled. Fine. You're right. She stood up and got dressed. What the hell is this? Issei was unable to fully comprehend the sight in front of him. In the dining hall and on two of the 4 120-foot-long tables sat a wide assortment of weapons. He earned a chuckle from the man behind him who smacked his back with his palm. Office, Great Red, and I made these for you trainees, Bahamut said. There's all sorts of goodies, so don't hesitate to try them out until you find something you like. Everything you see, even the clothing, is all brand new. Just be careful since these are not meant only for practice, they're real weapons that can hurt you. All 11 of them were elated as the 3 dragon gods, Odin, Thor and Freya watched them happily as they started picking up weapons. They made everything from combat knives, daggers, swords and spears to bow and arrows and shields. There also is a various array of clothing such as robes, ponchos and weight bracelets and anklets were there. If this were a merchant store in an MMORPG game, the only thing missing would be armor, but they didn't need any of that against magic. Raynare changed into a gorgeous violet dress that went to her hips at the front, came with thigh-high stockings, and a beautiful necklace of many pearls. It has 5 rubies, 4 positioned across from each other and 1 in the middle of them all, the necklace hanging between her large breasts. She also wore violet gloves that went to her upper arms. Turning to Office, she asked, what about this? How much do I owe you? Nothing, it's free. Free? Great Red nodded. Yep. Everything in this room is free. Tsubasa chose a black and silver-lined sword, carefully swinging it around a bit, nodding in satisfaction. Murayama picked up a katana that has its blade split into 3 different colors, covering a third of it on each side. Dark blue, blue in the middle, and light blue. The hilt is made of a leather grip and is all black, except for the middle of the grip that has a metallic silver shade, and the knob of the sword being golden. The small part of the sword, about an inch in width that separates the handle from the blade, is white. I like the sword. Raynare chose a pearlescent purple sword, the handle being mostly black, except for a small bit of gold at the bottom and silver in the middle. Broswis did the same thing as Raynare, except choosing a pearlescent red sword, one that is slightly longer than the queen's. Bravel, seeing how almost everyone chose a sword, was drawn to a large staff. She wanted hers to be a little unique to her. The majority of the staff is black, mainly the middle which has gold lining in a spiral. The bottom and top are golden, the top being circular. The middle of the top part holds an egg-shaped aquamarine blue magical gemstone. Arisu, why are you already eating breakfast? Don't you want to choose your weapons? Issei asked. Arisu scoffed. Dad already gave me mine years ago. I have a sword, a bow, and 2 daggers. She showed them to Issei, who was amazed at their beauty. The katana has a permanent fiery orange aura around its silver blade, with a completely black handle. The dagger sheaths are red, while the 2 daggers themselves having gold at the base of the blade and a grayish gold hue on the majority of the blade. The handle is mostly black, but with a design of dozens of small pink flowers. Lastly, the bow and arrow is made up of nothing but gold, the tip of the arrow permanently on fire. It is only hot once shot. You. Louise, one of Arisu's kittens, suddenly poked his head out of a pocket dimension by her hip. Louise. Where did you come from? You. He meowed happily at seeing Issei. Arisu answered for him. I have a pocket dimension that I decided to put the cats in, so they're safe in there and can't fall out. I also brought all the cat food with me. To everyone looking at her, it would seem that Louise is floating in midair. Back to the issue of weapons, this situation leaves Irina, Akeno, Kuroka, Volley, and Issei being unsure of what to choose. Great Red gestured to them. You 5, come here. I have some stuff you may like. Kuroka walked up to the 3 dragon gods and shook her head. I'm not going to wield anything but my magic, Naya. Akeno nodded. Me too. At least take these. Great Red handed 9 of the 11 trainees a pair of daggers, with the only exceptions being Issei and Arisu. They all received one in the color of red and one with blue. Both have black handles and gold lining the blade. The office showed Volley a blade that he likes. He nodded to her after holding it and giving it a swing. The sword is all black with bits of silver lining here and there, as well as a sapphire gemstone in the guard. Irina sighed. I already wield Durandal, so I should be fine without a new sword. The office blinked at her. What nonsense. You need a new weapon because your Durandal is going to choose Issei as its master once he's strong enough to add another holy sword, which will make a fine addition to his collection. Baruch pouted. Why? I love my Durandal. I'm sure it loves you too, but the holy swords will eventually merge with Issei's, as long as they're not in the possession of a god. Unfortunately, I know at least one of them is the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. I have no idea where the Totsuka no Tsurugi is. Irina sighed. Great Red smirked. Cheer up, Riri-chan. I have just the blade here that I think you will love. And he wasn't wrong. She instantly fell in love with the design of the sword he pulled out. It has a golden pommel, red grip, golden cross guard, and the entire blade is a bright glowing light pearlescent blue like that of the Bifrost. Ha! She squealed. This is beautiful. I shall name it Kuroko, that boy from that basketball and I'm Volley was recently watching. Volley shook his head at her silliness. Great Red chuckled. Now, finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. He turned to Issei. Office. Drumroll, if you would please. The stoic Ouroboros lightly slapped her lap repeatedly, much to everyone's amusement. Several seconds passed until she ended it with a crescendo. Issei, in preparation for the person who is going to train you today, we first have to give this to give you. Issei blinked. A shield. As soon as he grabbed hold of it, the weight of it hit him. It was a lot heavier than he thought, but it's manageable for a strong warrior like him. What is this made of? A new voice responded. That, my boy, is 30 pounds of wood, leather, and bronze forged in the fires of Greece herself. Stepping out of a teleportation circle, their first thought upon seeing him was, holy crap, he is ripped. Who are you? The man has brown eyes, short, well-kempt black hair, as well as a large beard that wasn't too big, but covered his face. He wore a red cape and red shorts, along with long, armored boots. I am Leonidas of Sparta. Raynare's eyes widened. King Leonidas. He nodded. Yes, as well as your trainer for the day. Issei coughed. Hold on, I thought you died with the other 300. Leonidas smirked. I did, but Zeus gave me another chance at life and made me immortal. Heh. Hades was quite upset about that since he couldn't have my soul. Enough about that, I'll explain it all later. Zeus sent me here to train you. They nodded. Issei showed the gods his shield. This shield is great and all, but it's quite beat up. "That's my shield," Leonidas said. "You can have it." Great Red held a hand onto the shield and instantly repaired it. "There. Not only is it brand new, but it is also now indestructible. As a matter of fact, Office, Bahamut, and I infused our magic into every item. All of you chose to make them invincible, even the clothes. Now Issei, let's give you the rest of your weapons." He handed Issei a combat knife with a black handle and guard. The middle of the blade is black while the rest of it is blood red. Next, he gave Issei a curvy dagger that is all blood red. "The knife and dagger are one custom made by yours truly," Great Red briefly bowed. "Wow, thanks Uncle Red. Heh, aren't I just the coolest person ever?" Office eyed. "Step aside, show off. I have a gift for Issei, too." She gave him a dagger with an extremely unique design. The handle and guard are all blackened with curvy linings, as well as a pair of snakes as the guard to represent Office. The blade is extra jagged and is pure white. "Auntie, this is beautiful. Thank you." She gave him a small grin. Bahamut, holding a rectangular case in front of Issei with both hands, said, "This is the final item. Open it." In it, he saw a sword that radiated draconic energy. Issei could instantly tell who made it. Bahamut smiled. "This was a collaboration between your uncle and I. I personally think it is the perfect gift for the man that is going to marry my daughter someday." He winked at Issei. Arisu's face turned red. "Dad." He laughed nervously. The handle is dark gray with a lava orange circular knob. The guard has golden scales on them, and the blade is mostly crimson with silver on the outside edges. Issei took hold of the blade and lifted it out of its case, causing it to suddenly change forms with very minor differences. The middle of the tip of the blade disappeared, showing a 3-inch dip inside it. The blade looks more jagged now, and the golden scales on the guard are bent inwards a little. What just happened? It changed forms. Great Red smirked mischievously and whispered in Issei's ear. "Issei, boost once, transfer your power to the sword, and point the tip at your aunt, something funny will happen." The Office heard the conversation and developed a tick mark in annoyance, but even though she knew what was about to happen, she decided to allow it for Issei's sake. Issei did as he was told. Boost. Transfer. Stepping back and pointing the sword at his aunt, a sudden massive red beam of energy fired at her. If she were any dragon weaker than herself or Great Red, she would have died, but to her, it merely tickled. She kicked Great Red in the beep. Yo. Great Red rolled around in pain while Bahamut and the Norse gods cackled at the scene, with everyone else trying not to laugh out of respect of the second most powerful dragon. "How the hell are they married?" Murayama said, feeling a little bad for Great Red. Because Office loves meow." The Ouroboros held the Apocalypse dragon by his wrist behind his back, threatening to break it. Issei thought out loud. "I wonder what would happen if I am holding this sword and go into Balance Breaker. I sense something good would happen." Balance Breaker. The sword changed to its third and final form. Everything below the blade turned crimson, while the blade itself turned mostly gold with crimson linings, almost looking like veins. On the guard, a dark gray horn is sticking out. The blade is also a few inches longer than its normal 50 inches. Issei summoned his dragon familiar. "Ray." "What is it?" Raynare said. "Oh, not you babe. I'm talking to my familiar." She frowned. "Give it a new name." Alright. He sighed. "Ray, I am changing your name to Isoroku." "Yes master." "Isoroku, what should I name this sword?" "How about Genetsu? It means passion, enthusiasm, zeal, fervor, and ardor." "I love it. This sword shall be called Genetsu. Thank you Isoroku." The familiar dissipated into thin air. Ollie sighed. "Man, it's so unfair that you have 5 of the holy swords in one Pakage, and now this one, which is even more powerful than all holy swords combined." Issei laughed nervously. "Sorry about that, Volley. I know we're rivals, so this is basically like cheating for me." The White Dragon Emperor smirked. "No, all is fair in love and war. You're merely doing what you can to get stronger by any means to protect the people you care about." Great Red, still on the floor, stated, "By the way, all 11 of you now have your own infinite pocket dimensions. Congrats." Leonidas clapped his hands together once. "Alright everyone, let's get to training." Issei shook his head. "No. Breakfast first." Issei was getting his ass handed to him in a spar against the former king of Sparta, who was now fully decked in Spartan armor since he is now wearing his helmet. Issei and Volley weren't allowed to use their boosted gear and divine dividing, so for now, Issei had to get used to using his shield. He held his shield up with his left arm while his right held Genetsu. Charging at Leonidas, the ancient Spartan king sent him flying back with a powerful kick to the shield. "Stop and take a break, Issei." Issei panted for air. "So I have to ask, how many Persian soldiers did the 300 Spartans kill during the Battle of Thermopylae?" Leonidas chuckled while casually dodging the attacks of the other 10 trainees, much to their frustration. We killed around 20,000 and slowed down the advance of Xerxes' army of 500,000. Enough time was brought for the rest of Sparta to fight. The Secretary wiped some sweat off his brow. Is everything that happened in that movie true then? It is. Well, except for the whole thing with my wife cheating on me. Issei imitated Leonida's voice. My favorite line is when you told Xerxes, judging from what I have seen so far, I might as well have marched my women up here to fight. That was a sick burn. Leonidas huffed in amusement. The Red Dragon Emperor took up a stance. I'm ready to go again. He crouched down a little with his shield while jogging towards Leonidas. The ancient Spartan attempted to throw a roundhouse kick once the dragon got in range, but this time, Issei sidestepped it and immediately swung his shield in a sideways arc, landing a solid blow to the head that knocked Leonidas off his feet, much to his surprise. Issei swung Genetsu only to be surprised that Leonidas caught the dragon's sword with his bare hand, while he used the other to backhand an incoming attack from volley, sending the white dragon skidding back on his feet. Ravel tapped her staff on the ground, the blue gemstone lighting up like Christmas, firing a beam of energy at their adversary who jumped backwards to dodge the attack coming from his 9 o'clock, only for Raynare to land a hard haymaker to the back of his head, making him fall face first, as Akeno sent a massive wave of holy lightning from above, striking him. Leonidas coughed as he stood up. Well done. You managed to land what would have been a killing blow. Raynare held her bruised hand in pain. Ow. Jesus, what is your skull made of? Steel. Leonidas scoffed. No. I am just as human as you are, only that I am a descendant of Hercules. I was also wearing my helmet, so that's probably why you hurt yourself. He sat down on the soccer field. Sit down, kids. I have a story to tell you. As they got comfortable, he sighed. You know, the Persian king, Xerxes, sent this messenger to my humble abode. He threatened that our people would be enslaved, and he also insulted my wife by saying that she, a woman, has no place to talk amongst men. Issei continued. Your wife then said, only Spartan women give birth to real men, right? Spot on. What kind of man was Xerxes to threaten to enslave and rape the women of his enemy? No man. Anyway, let me tell you, Issei Haidu, why it is important to use force to protect the ones you love and why you should hold those dear to you close. As a king, you have a responsibility. These ladies look up to you to protect them and provide for them, something all women want in men, and it is up to you to make sure that happens. If you cannot fight for your women like I did, you are not worthy to be a king. And to the girls of Issei's peerage, you are in the middle of a war with the Khaos Brigade, and your king being the Red Dragon Emperor means he is going to be involved in a lot of fights, so while he's still alive, make sure to let him know how much you love him, because you never know when he could perish, on or off the battlefield. Some assassins may take aim for him while he isn't fighting. All the girls blushed and squirmed shyly except Raynare, who had a thoughtful look on her face. At night, Issei took a bath. Not just any bath, but a hot spring. He couldn't believe that the royal castle has one which happens to be right next to his room, and they're separated by gender, meaning he can escape from the girls and into his own thoughts. Vali decided he would take one later. Ah, that feels so good. His sore muscles instantly started to feel better. This is the best stay outside my own home I have ever had. He opened his eyes and reflected on Leonida's advice. There is no way that I could ever face any of the girls in my harem again if I failed to protect them. That's why I have to make sure I don't fail. I have to get stronger for them. Stretching his worn legs, he enjoyed the hot spring for a good half hour before he decided he spent enough time in there and left back to his and Raynare's room. Opening the door, he was met with the sight of Raynare in only a towel covering her wet body as she sat on the bed, also having recently returned from the hot springs. He blushed at the sight of her somewhat moist skin, but he gulped as he tossed those thoughts aside and closed the door behind himself, making his way towards her. He sat beside her. She grinned at him as she leaned to her left and kissed him. Hey, what's got you so deep in thought? Issei smiled. Not much. Just what Leonidas said earlier. I'm scared, to be honest. This whole being a king thing has more pressure to it than I thought it would. She ran her fingers through his hair. What are you worried about, darling? Not being able to protect the girls I love. If I ever failed to make sure you're safe, I could never forgive myself. Raynare frowned sadly. Issei, she then gave him a determined look. Issei, I have been thinking about what Leonidas said to the girls, about making sure to let you know how much we love you, and I want to have sex with you. I want to make love with you. He blushed and turned to face her. You do? She blushed and nodded with a smile as tears of joy rolled down her cheeks, which he gently wiped away. Yes. We never know when we could die, so I want every moment to count. Unlike most fallen angels, I am still a virgin. Seeing his confused look, she shook her head. I'll explain why I fell some other time, but right now, I want you. Please, Issei. I love you so much. He nodded. I love you too, Ray. I love you so much, Raynare. She smiled blissfully. I love you so much as well, my Issei. Another voice interrupted. They looked over to the doorway to see Arisu and all the other girls. Issei panicked. Girls. Raynare wrapped her arms around Issei's neck possessively before giving him a kiss on his cheek, looking over to the other girls with a smirk. Looks like Issei and I are having a baby. Irina fainted, catching Ravel by surprise as she caught her. Ara said Akeno. Now you've gone and done it. You have made me jealous. Arisu glared at them and huffed as she turned her face away and walked out. HMPH. Baka Issei. Baka. Day 6 of 120 training days. Asgard. The next morning, Issei woke up with Raynare in his arms, bare naked this time. He blushed as he remembered what they did last night, but he shook his head of those thoughts and got up to start the day. Most people would either choose to stay single or get lucky and be in a relationship with one person. Issei is obviously neither of them. Being in polyamorous relationships is a lot harder than he thought, as such a thing can lead to times where certain parties are unhappy for whatever reason. And right now, said party is Arisu. Whenever the two happened to cross paths, she would huff and walk away as he tried to talk to her. Issei was on his way to the dining hall when the two met each other's eyes. HMPH. She huffed, using a hand to sassily toss a strand of her long ponytail behind her shoulder, her beautiful dark brown hair swaying behind her. He never noticed it before, but her hair can almost be mistaken as black color due to certain lighting. Issei, hand outstretched to her, lowered it and sighed. I know that she can be the jealous type at times, but did I do something wrong, Drake? How would I know? Ask her yourself. Great, you can read my thoughts, Bahamut. Ugh. Well, duh. This is my daughter we're talking about. I will fix this situation, one way or another. You better, or else. Issei gulped nervously. Anyway, if you don't mind, I have a personal question for you, Bahamut. What happened to Arisu's mother? She died when she gave birth to Arisu. Oh. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. Don't be. Well, it still kind of hurts to think about. I have gotten over her death. Arisu never knew her, which is why she doesn't hurt as much as I do over the mere mention of the topic, but you should still never ask her. I won't. One last question, Bahamut. Is it possible to make everyone in a harem happy? Ahahahaha. Hey. This is a serious question. Sorry. Here is my take on it. It depends on how many people are in a harem. I have never had one since I am fine with being with one person, but in your case, I wouldn't have any more than a dozen girls. I see. Thanks for the advice. No prob. Just be sure to talk to my daughter. The sooner, the better. Right. Issei sat down at the table next to Arisu, where breakfast, the most important meal of the day, is ready. Pancakes and eggs sat steaming, the delicious aroma making his stomach growl. HMPH. She did it again. He looked at Arisu. Alright ponytail, what's wrong? Shut up. Don't call me weird nicknames, Baka. Issei chuckled nervously. He took one of her hands in both of his. You've been like this since last night. Were you jealous of Raynare? Why would I be jealous, Baka? She shook his hands away, only to be met by them again. I mean, she and I obviously had sex. She glared at him, but then sighed. Fine, I'm a little jealous of her, but that ain't the problem. Then what is it? Her sharp blue eyes whipped to him with another glare. Hey, I just want to help. Arisu sighed. It's that I happened to walk into your room at that exact moment. Sure, it was with everyone else since we all wanted to spend a little time with you, but things obviously got awkward. The other 9 trainees are watching this exchange, mostly amused except for Irina who silently agreed with Arisu. Raynare rolled her eyes. Just because I took Issei's virginity doesn't mean you have to be all pouty, Ms. Grumpy. For men, virginity really doesn't mean anything if they're in a harem. The princess sighed. Fine. You're right. I'll stop being mad. Silence took hold until Irina asked a question. So Raynare, are you and Issei really having a baby? Raynare blushed as she exchanged looks with Issei. We are. Roswa sighed. Isn't Issei too young to be a father? I mean, he's only 15. Raynare retorted. By human standards, yes, but aren't I too old to be alive? Besides, Issei is a far better man than almost all human males his age, and he's a dragon. She kissed her king on his cheek and smiled at him, making him blush. Ollie smirked. Fair enough. Just don't hesitate to let the rest of us know if the 3 of you need anything. We're your friends, after all. Tsubasa nodded. Indeed. I may not look like it, but I am really good with kids. If you ever need someone to look after them and play with them, I'm your gal. She winked at Raynare. Hiroka interjected. And if you need someone to feed them lots of milk, I can help with that, Naya. Akeno narrowed her eyes at the Nekashu. Fufu. I would be better suited for that job, you thieving cat. Hiroka glared at her and hissed. My boobs are bigger than yours, Naya. Issei coughed. Alright Kuroka, Akeno, you are most definitely not breastfeeding my daughter. That job belongs to the biological mother, who by the way, has bigger boobs than both of you. Everybody burst out laughing while Raynare frowned. Son. We're having a son, Raynare corrected. Issei smirked at her. How much you want to bet? I don't gamble. Besides, you can call it a woman's, specifically a mother's intuition. Oh. After a little silence, Tsubasa shyly spoke. I say, is it alright if I join your harem? I want to be with you too. He smiled. Of course. Ravel had her eyes widen in surprise. I wasn't expecting you to ask in front of all of us. Tsubasa laughed nervously. I know, right? Ahahaha. Roswis thought to herself, great. Now I'm the only one without a boyfriend. They carried on and ate breakfast. Minutes later, a magic circle appeared and out stepped someone Issei felt like he hasn't seen in a long time. Grandpa Tannen. The handsome orange-haired man smiled brightly. Yo, Issei. I'll be training the 11 of you for the next couple weeks. The new voice interrupted. No, you won't, not so fast. I already have scheduled the next 4 days to train them. Stella. Irina said with her mouth full of pancakes, making Volley sigh at her childish behavior. Tannen slumped over. That's so unfair. I wanted to spend time with my grandson. He collapsed on the table, crying dramatically, making Issei chuckle. Don't worry, Gramps. You'll get your time soon. The office, Great Red, Bahamut and Tiamat appeared. Issei is with Offspring. Tannen blinked. Come again. Stella cleared her throat awkwardly, not being used to having all the attention on her, much less being a teacher as they stood in the soccer field with Tannen, Tiamat, Office, Great Red and Bahamut sitting in the stands, looking onwards. For the next 4 days, I am going to be teaching you all how to combine magic with your weapons and how to control your aura however you want to. They nodded. Murayama raised her hand. Stella, my magical abilities aren't very good. The Pincat grinned. It's alright. I'll teach you, so leave it to me. Now, pull out your weapons. They all did as they were told. Issei summoned his shield and Genetsu. Suddenly, a scroll of text appeared in front of his eyes. Every weapon has its own category name and tier to describe their combat grade. Category names from least to most powerful. Caveman, Medieval, Modern Human Civilian, Modern Human, Military, Supernatural, Legendary, God, Biblical, and Draconic. Tiers from least to most powerful. F, E, D, C, B, A, S, SS, and SSS. For example, an F-tier supernatural weapon is more powerful than an SSS tier modern human military weapon. Their Genetsu is Draconic SSS tier, Shield is Draconic SSS tier, Holy Sword, 5X, is Biblical S tier, and daggers given by Office and Great Red are Draconic S tier. Now, try looking at the weapons everyone else is holding to see their combat grade. He looked at the daggers everyone else got to see them listed as Draconic C tier. Volley's sword as well as Arisu's sword and bow and arrow are listed as Draconic SSS tier. Her daggers are Draconic A tier. Murayama's sword is Draconic SS tier. Raynare and Irina's swords as well as Ravel's staff are listed as Draconic S tier. Tsubasa's sword is Draconic A tier. Roswis has a Draconic B tier sword. Interesting, Issei thought. His thoughts were interrupted by Stella, who was conversing with Murayama. What kind of magic do you see yourself capable of? Not fire, that's for sure. I think it would be awesome if I could learn how to control ice. Stella nodded. Ice, you say? Then you need to start by building a place in your mind. A place in my mind. Yes, a mindscape like a glacier or a frozen tundra, maybe even an ice rink. Have you ever gone ice skating? I think you would understand how much it hurts to fall in an ice rink because of how hard the ice is if you experience it for yourself. Murayama's eyes widened. I actually have. A long time ago, my friend Yui and I did just that. Good. Now imagine that same coldness, that sharp dripping wet jaggedness of the ice in the palm of your hand, something that you can stab your enemies with but can also melt in your hands at a very fast rate. The pawn closed her eyes and held her hand forward, doing as she was told. The air in front of her suddenly turned cold. She opened her eyes to see that she is holding an icicle. Stella smiled. Nice job. Now, try transferring the essence of the element of ice to your sword. The already blue sword began glowing as an aura of bitter cold swirled around the steel. Murayama smiled. I did it. Guo Japan. Meanwhile at Issei's house, it had gotten dark since the sun had set. Onaseek, go get some popcorn for me. I want to watch a movie, Middle ordered. No. Why not? You didn't say the magic word. What's the magic word? Please. Asia gave him the puppy eyes. May I please have some ice cream, Donaseek? His willpower nearly broke. Raynare was playing Mario Kart with Middleton Issei's console as Asia watched. She chipped in her 2 cents. Me as well. I want chocolate flavored. Now go. What am I, a slave? Yes. Ah. The buxom purple-haired girl cackled. I'm kidding. Donasik sighed. Can you come with me please? Why? I am scared of the dark. Then turn on a light, idiot. No. I require a companion to complete this arduous task. Me being able to accomplish anything in the dark would be a monumental achievement. Ugh, fine. Raynare paused the game and swung her legs off the couch to get up. You better be grateful that I'm sacrificing my game time for you. He saluted. Yes ma'am. On their way downstairs, the doorbell suddenly rang. Donasik nervously looked at Raynare who rolled her eyes at him as she went to open the door to see a middle-aged couple. The man spoke. Hello. My name is Goro Haidu, and this is my wife Mickey. We're wondering if Issei is home. Raynare smiled. Oh. Issei isn't home, but you can come inside. As she held the door open and allowed the Haidus in, she was panicking deep down, unsure of how she would explain Issei's absence. Whoa, Goro muttered, seeing the inside of the huge house for the first time. All Issei told him is that he had the necessary resources to build the home, but he never specified what those resources were. On the large staircase where Bahamut's sculpture stood, 2 more stood on either side of it, both smaller than Bahamut, representing Office and Great Red. The Office one creeps most of them out due to its snake-like design, but the Great Red representation can only be described as awesome. Mickey began speaking. So, who are you and how has our Issei been? My name is Raynare, a friend of Issei's. Aw, hell with it, Raynare thought. She began telling them all about the supernatural, starting with Issei's date with Yuma and subsequent death, the 3 factions, the Great War, Khaos, the Khaos Brigade, and Issei training in Asgard. So you mean to tell me my son is a dragon, and because of that, he has a harem, Goro exclaimed, receiving a nod. I'm so proud of you, Issei. On the other hand, Mickey ignored her husband as she couldn't help but worry for her son's safety, but Raynare assured her that he would be okay since he is apparently op. Day 7 of 120 training days. Channeling one's magic into a weapon is easier said than done. It's like putting a part of oneself out there where it doesn't belong. Some didn't struggle with this lesson at all, such as Issei, Arisu, Vali, Raynare, Murayama, and Roswas. Issei, Arisu, and Vali are the best at it and decided to spar one another, but everyone else needed extra work. The Kendo managed to get her holy lightning to combine with her daggers, but it didn't last long, much to her dismay. Kuroka had the same issue with Senjutsu. After much practice, the two were able to prolong the magically infused weapons. Days 8 to 10 of 120 training days. Stella is currently coaching Arena, Murayama, Raynare, Roswas, and Tsubasa. Murayama is the guinea pig for her current demonstration. Now I'm going to teach you all how to launch a magical attack from a distance. Out of all of you, Natsuki is one of the best at what she has learned so far. Now Natsuki, show us what you can do. Stella took a defensive position several yards away, holding up her golden broadsword. Murayama nodded. Her sword swirled with a bitter cold aura and she swung it in a horizontal slash, launching an arc of dozens of sharp shards of ice toward Stella, who blocked or deflected them all away safely, impressing everyone. The Pinkette grinned. Did you all see what she did there? She managed to launch an attack by literally feeling the magic flowing through her, grabbing it and swinging it like a whip. Murayama suddenly dropped her sword and fell onto a knee, stabbing the ground with her sword, trembling as she struggled to stand. Seeing this, Issei rushed over and held her up to stabilize her. Natsuki, what's wrong? She smiled weakly. Sorry. I suddenly felt very tired and almost passed out. Murayama put her sword away into her pocket dimension. Dummy. Lately, you have been pushing yourself a little too hard and you might have completely drained your mana. I am improving though, aren't I? He sighed. You definitely are. Just be careful. You're done for the day, so let's get you back to your bed to rest. He picked her up and carried her bridal style. Murayama blushed. But I. No buts. Issei teleported to her room and set her down on the bed, tucking her in. Now, I'm ordering you as your king to get some rest. Natsuki sighed. Fine. He smiled and leaned down to kiss her forehead. The next day, she recovered. Training continued as they all sparred with Stella. Cocytus, Olympus. An explosion shook the icy grounds of the Cocytus. Guards panicked as they ran to the source of the disturbance, coughing due to the smoke. Reau. An enraged voice howled echoed throughout the massive mountain, the sound terrifying all who heard it. What happened? Oh no, it escaped. Well, don't just stand there like idiots. Guards, chase after it. I have to tell Zeus, and he isn't going to be happy about this. Days 11 to 15 of 120 training days. Asgard. Hello there. I'll be your trainer for the next 4 days. Ikki Kurigane smiled at the group. I will be training you from sunrise to sunset, almost non-stop aside from 30-minute breaks for lunch and dinner, as well as 2 10-minute bathroom breaks, until you have mastered your sword fighting techniques. Offense, defense, blocks, dodges, parries, pirouettes, footwork, jabs, slashes, etc. Ikki looked at Issei. Haidu, how many stabs in a second do you think is good? Issei shrugged. I don't know. 10. Ikki grinned Akeno style with his eyes closed, giving them male ara vibes. I'm afraid that is incorrect. 10 is awful. I'm able to do 20 in a second. 20. Yes. I am also aware that one of you has an ability to see the future for what you have to do for the best possible outcome in a combat situation. Murayama, you will not be allowed to use that ability because I promise it will do you plenty of good to try to use your own instincts to counter my attacks. She nodded. Right. And Tetsu? Ikki spoke the name of his raven black sword, summoning it and pointing it at Issei. I'll spar starting with Haidu for 20 minutes straight before I let you rest and repeat the process for everyone else, but whenever you're not sparring with me, practice your swings. The two of them stood in the middle of the soccer field. Let's go ahead, the robotic female voice declared, marking the beginning of the spar. Ikki sprung forward and viciously hacked and slashed at Issei. Issei, who usually uses an offensive style of fighting, was doing all he could to fend off his opponent's weapon, which is aiming directly for his body. Feeling like his life is in danger, Issei summoned his shield while holding Genetsu in his right hand. What's wrong? Ikki asked as he spun around multiple times with downward slashes, trying to get Issei to attack. You can't win if you don't try. Didn't Michael Jordan once say that you will miss 100% of the shots you don't take? Issei grit his teeth as he jumped back. Actually, that was Wayne Gretzky that said it, the greatest athlete of all time. He lunged forward and began attempting to mimic Ikki's fighting style, while combining it with his own. Speed is key, but so is patience, he thought. Physically speaking, Issei is stronger than Ikki, but with a sword, his adversary is like a demon since Ikki is more flexible and experienced. Issei slashed diagonally upwards, quickly ducking and spinning as he used his sword to block a counterattack. The shield reversed all of Ikki's momentum as his Intetsu met it, the force causing Ikki to stagger backwards for a very brief moment. Issei used this to his advantage, spinning around as he ducked and threw a horizontal slash at the boy's legs. Ikki barely blocked, but in the process, he dropped Intetsu. Issei had found his fighting style, a balance of offense and defense. In that moment, he considered pocketing his shield, sacrificing a possible form of defense in favor of speed, but the boost in his offensive abilities would have been too small to be worth it. Well played. Ikki went on to spar with the others for the remainder of the day, cycling through everyone at least 3 times. Akeno, Kuroka, Ravel, and Tsubasa played defense, since their role is more support-based. They usually practiced dodging, waiting until they could find an opening to attack, the first two throwing their daggers at Ikki, Ravel firing her magical staff, and Tsubasa keeping him busy. Never once did they manage to land a hit. Irina, Roswas, Murayama and Raynare also found that they prefer to be balanced between offense and defense. They want to challenge themselves and be perfectionists in their technique. Arisu and Volley prefer brute strength, meaning purely offense. While Volley has a lot to work on, Arisu is perfect in every aspect of swordsmanship, including defense which she rarely has to use. In the end, the one most skilled with a sword is Arisu by a very large margin. Issei watched Arisu and Ikki spar, creating powerful shockwaves when their swords met. Not only is she great with a bow, she can duel with a sword too. One could say the heavens have blessed her twice. Right now, Issei is practicing his swings, hitting the one of the PVC pipes on a soccer goal. The most number of attacks he could get in a second is 14, which shouldn't be considered bad, but by Sekiryuite standards, he's good but not good enough, mediocre at best. When Ikki sparred with Murayama, it was like a graceful yet dangerous dance, as both duelists showed more experience than most, neither side yielding despite their fatigue, as they jabbed at each other at a fast pace. Ikki raised his sword to block. Stella taught you how to combine the use of both a weapon and your magic in one, right? Remember to use your magic. Murayama nodded as she jumped back a dozen yards. Right. She slashed horizontally, sending a volley of ice projectiles at Ikki, with the goal of forcing him on the defensive as she seemingly disappeared in front of him due to the fog and snow. Ikki ducked while casting a barrier over himself for protection, gritting his teeth as he looked all around himself, squinting. Where is she? For a moment, it went deathly quiet until Ikki heard a whoosh of wind above him. His eyes widened. An ambush. By the time he brought his sword up to defend himself, it was too late. Ha-ya. Murayama grunted as she swung as hard as she could and knocked Intetsu out of her trainer's hand, making him fall onto his back. Ikki was surprised to say the least, no longer able to see his breath in front of him. The cold and fog vanished to reveal a 12-foot-tall circular wall of ice all around him in the shape of a dome, a single hole at the top. How did you do that? Murayama grinned, proud of herself. I trapped you in a small igloo. Using the snowstorm I created, I was able to ambush you due to your lack of visibility by climbing to the top and dive bombing you. She offered him a hand to help him up, which he gladly took. Thanks. You know, Stella told me that she thinks you might be too hard on yourself, both physically and mentally since you collapsed recently. Eh? Yeah, I suppose I am. Why? I consider myself to be the weakest of this entire group of trainees. I want to be useful to say, I do, but I can't if I am weak. I am the weakest out of all of us. Icky nodded. A little word of advice for you. Back in the dimension Stella and I came from, when I met Stella, there wasn't a single person at school or home who believed in me and my abilities. I was called the worst one. The only people in my own family that gave me encouragement and love were my little sister and my long-dead great-grandfather. Even my own girlfriend, Stella, underestimated me greatly when we first met. But a long time ago, my great-grandfather told me something, words that gave me hope, that I live by to this very day, and I think you could use them. What he said next, Murayama would never forget. Are you frustrated by the fact that you are the weakest one? If so, that's good. Hold on to that feeling. It's proof that you haven't given up on yourself. Listen, don't give up while living within your boundaries. Don't be a boring person like that. If you have the guts to keep moving forward, you can become anything you want to be. We're living creatures that don't have wings, but we still went to the moon. Icky smiled reminiscently. I live by the code of chivalry, which is more than just how a man treats women, it is a way of life. In combat, chivalry is respecting your opponent, never underestimating them, never insulting them, and basically fighting with honor. Because of my chivalry, people always insulted me and looked down on me, saying that I will never amount to anything, that I wasted my time, but I never retaliated. One time, I was forced to repeat a year all because my father despised me for being useless in his eyes, influencing the administration to discriminate against me. Even then, I never gave up because of those words my great-grandfather said, and I managed to force them all to acknowledge me. Not my father, no. He never loved me or even thought of me. But my fellow students at my school, however, started to see me differently once they saw how powerful I had become. They began respecting me more. Murayama gulped. Your father sounds like an awful person, but at least your great-grandfather was nice. He nodded. Indeed. He never coddled me or told me he loved me since he gave me tough love, but it was his way of showing it that made me realize how much he truly cared compared to my own father. As a kid, I ran away from home, and Gramps was the one who trained me a few months before he died. The samurai nodded. Thank you for telling me this, Kurogane. I will be sure to remember his words. On the final day of training, Stella stood next to her boyfriend who was making an announcement. Icky coughed. I don't mean to put any of you down, but I am going to be honest with you and present you with a list I made of who I think is the best to the worst with a sword. The only ones not being included are Himejima, Taoju, and Phoenix, who excel at dodging. He held up a piece of paper that read the following. Best to worst swordsmen and women. First, Tai Arisu Yamauchi. First, Tai Natsuki Murayama. First, Tai Issei Haidu. Fourth, Raynare. Fifth, Volley Lucifer. Sixth, Roswas. Seventh, Irina Shidu. 8th. Tsubasa Yura. I can tell that Shidu and Yura are both very new to using blades, so while you have a ways to go in terms of improvement, you are still quite advanced for beginners. Quick learners. Should you ever fight with anyone else with your experience, you would likely win. Icarus may have lived an easy life as he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he was never powerful. The truly strong would never arrogantly fly too close to the sun, for they know what it is like to be weak. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.